Ohio Governor Mike Dewine is entering his final year as his state's chief executive. Our Chase Campbell sat down with the governor to look back at the state's achievements in 2025 and ahead to the governor's priorities for 2026.
Looking back at 2025, Ohio Governor Mike Dewine highlights continued support for Appalachian Ohio with the Appalachian Community Grant Program. The program invested $500 million into Ohio's 32 Appalachian counties, funding projects including Marietta's ongoing levee revitalization.
The whole idea was we had some federal dollars, and we wanted to put them really towards our 38 Appalachian counties, but we wanted to let the county or the local community, the people, decide how to spend the money. And so it's interesting. Communities come up with just different things.
With 1 year left as governor, Dewine says ensuring every Ohio child can read is one of the top priorities of his administration.
The whole idea was we had some federal dollars, and we wanted to put them really towards our 38 Appalachian counties, but we wanted to let the county or the local community, the people, decide how to spend the money. And so it's interesting. Communities come up with just different things.
One way to meet that goal is continuing his administration's emphasis on the science of reading, using phonics-based instruction when teaching students to read. He also looks forward to the deployment of the Ohio Student Eye Exam, or Ohio C program, which provides eye care services to K-3 students.
We're going with a van trailer into that, right by that school many times, and kids will be able to come out. There'll be an optometrist there who will give the child the vision test, and then if the child does in fact need glasses, that van will be back in 3 or 4 weeks with the glasses, fit the child, and they'll be on their way.
Discussions surrounding Ohio's biennial budget were dominated by property tax reform. The governor vetoed a number of items in the budget bill related to property tax, and later convened a working group to research the issue and provide recommendations for how to give Ohioans property tax relief without hurting public schools and other institutions funded by local property tax dollars.
On the one hand, we've got people who have lived in their home for decades, and now they've got to leave their home. Why? Because the property tax is too high. On the other hand, though, we have to have money to support our schools.
At the end of the year, Dewine signed several bills that he says managed to provide relief while protecting local school funding.
The bills that I signed, I think, are good bills. I think they strike a good balance, and it's a tough balance. It's tough to make.
The state budget largely dispensed with the Fair School Funding Plan, which lawmakers first adopted in 2022. According to the think tank Policy Matters Ohio, the new budget gives public schools nearly $3 billion less than they would have received under the old plan. At the same time, the state continues to fund the EdChoice private school voucher program, which a Franklin County judge ruled unconstitutional in June. Dewine defended the voucher program.
The voucher program is constitutional, in my opinion, and we certainly don't have any judge that's ordered this thing. We can't do it. That's good. These things are litigated a lot.
Class 2 injection wells, which are used to dispose of fracking fluid or brine, became a major topic of public concern in Marietta in 2025, with the City Council unanimously passing a resolution asking the state legislature to issue a 3-year moratorium on the wells due to concerns over their impact on drinking water. There's a precedent for the fluid in injection wells migrating into oil and gas production wells, and city officials worried the same sort of migration could lead to the toxic fluids in an injection well finding their way into the city's aquifer. Dewine said he doesn't believe a moratorium on the wells is necessary.
We don't think at this point the evidence shows that you need a moratorium, but that doesn't mean that we're going to walk away from this. We're going to continue to monitor that and see what we're finding. And if there's a danger, if there's a problem into public water, we obviously are going to take action.
The governor deferred to the judgment of state regulators.
They know that they need to be very vigilant in regard to this going into public water or any kind of drinking water, whether it's a private well or whether it is in public. So we're going to continue to monitor that, and if there's that problem, then we will immediately take action.
Dewine's term ends in January 2027. Chase Campbell, WTAP News.